Witam Państwa serdecznie, Błażej Hrapkowicz. Jesteśmy na 24. Międzynarodowym Festiwalu Filmowym Camerimage w Bydgoszczy. Our guest today is Robert Lantos, the recipient of Golden Frog for the producer with unique visual sensibility. Good day.
Good day to you.
How are you?
I am excellent. It's beautiful here, except it's cold.
It's cold, yeah. It's,
even coming from Canada, it's cold.
Compared to Canada, this is cold?
Yes, unexpectedly.
Well, it's good to know that we're better than Canada in Poland here, at least in one area.
Yeah, you don't have global warming here.
Maybe I think not yet. Not yet. Let's say not yet. I think we may instinctively recognize what it means for a director or for the cinematographer to have a visual sensibility. What do you think the producer sensibility has to be, or what's the most important thing here for a producer to do his job very well?
You know, the answer to your question is not simple. I'll tell you why. Because once upon a time, when I first started producing films, everyone knew what the word producer meant. It was a specific job. It was the job of the producer was to be a storyteller and to gather together a team of talent who would do justice to that story. That has changed because today some movies have 10, 15 producers credited, not some, most. And I have no idea what they do, and neither do they, because you can be a producer if your father is a billionaire and gave you some money.
I was hoping you could illuminate us, enlighten us what these all producers do, but
well, some of them some of them inherit and they decide to play in the movies instead of race cars, for example. Some do race cars or race horses, some do movies. Some of them are talent managers and they have what's called leverage because they manage a movie star, so they make that part of the deal. Some of them are, I haven't got a clue actually what they do. But so the profession of producer has been seriously diluted. Not the profession, but the word, the credit. It's a dying breed. But there are a few of us who still do what a producer is supposed to do, which is to begin a project at the beginning. Sometimes a project is originated by the director, usually if the director is also a writer. Sometimes I initiate a project because I read a book, a novel, I see a play that I really like, and I say, I want to make a movie of this. And it can begin in a variety of ways, but the producer is there at the beginning. Before there is a script. His role really is throughout the whole process of development and writing and then casting and choosing locations and choosing crew and then later on and throughout the editing and all the decisions that go into post-production. The producer's role is to love the film and the project as much as the director or the writer, but to keep a certain distance from it at the same time so that he or she can be the eyes and the ears of the audience. To be in, but also to be able to back out sufficient to see the screen from here and not only from behind.
In your work as a producer, do you have any creative input in the film, or do you just leave that to the director and try to nurture his vision with him?
Well, first of all, it really depends on the director and on the film. But sometimes my role is reduced to I'll make suggestions here and there. Usually, and when it comes to the screenplay and the casting of the leads, and then the final editing and the choosing of the cinematographer and the composer and the editor, there I am in every case very involved because it's, that's sort of all those decisions largely determine what the film will look like. But depending on who the director is and what our relationship is, I sometimes take a back seat, certainly during production. Sometimes I'm on the set and every day and very much involved. It depends. The case of the film that is screening right now here, Barney's version, that was, you know, that's based on a novel written by a brilliant Kenyan writer, Mordecai Richler, who was a friend of mine. And so I began to work on the adaptation of that novel with him writing the screenplay, and he died before he finished it. So at that film was like became a mission for me to make the film in his voice, except he wasn't there. So there I was very much front and center in every creative decision, because I sort of felt he was watching me, and I knew his voice better than anyone except his wife. And so I was in that particular case, I was meticulous about this, every nuance. And
it was the question of being faithful to his
to
artistic
exactly
vision.
How he would have made this, or how he would have wanted to see it made. In other cases, you know, when I make films with, say, David Cronenberg, then, you know, it's different. Usually he initiates the project. In fact, every time it's his project.
I was going to ask about David Cronenberg because you worked with him on a number of films, and he is a very strong artistic personality. He has his own unique style. So you're saying there's a difference here?
Of course there is. But first of all, usually he initiates the project. I have never gone to David and say, I want you to hire you to direct. I have with others. For example, Atom Egoyan, he also usually initiates his projects and writes them. But the last film we made together was the opposite. It was a screenplay that I had that I offered to him. So it can work both ways. But with David, it's once the decisions are made on the cast, on the leading roles, and on the key crew, and then I am very much sort of, I stand back. And then in the editing room, I give him my opinions. And there's never been a situation where there's been any confrontation or friction. So we're civilized people who talk things out.
Is this the same case with Atom Egoyan? Because he's a director who has a very different style and very different themes than David Cronenberg. Is he also different in the way he works and in the way you cooperate with him?
It's actually, you know, very similar. The only exception is this last film, Remember, which is here at the festival, which I brought to him. But that's the only difference, in that we work together the same way. Once the film starts shooting, if the producer has to interfere, that's really means there's a big problem. You know, if the producer has to be, and it has happened in my life, but if I have to argue about where the camera should be, and about whether we need another take or we don't, and, you know, about the lighting or about the details of that day's production, that means there's a real problem. And like I said, it has happened, but it's much better when it doesn't.
In terms of modern cinema industry, and you mentioned something about a lot about what the producers do nowadays, and
or
don't do, or we don't know what they actually do. There is a strong sense among many filmmakers that today we have the blockbusters on the one hand, and the independent movies on the other hand, and the whole area in between, in the middle, is vanishing, and it is very difficult, even for people like Steven Spielberg, sometimes, to do a movie like Lincoln and put it actually in the cinemas and to do that movie. Do you agree with that view, or maybe do you see another major shifts in the industry that are changing, in your opinion, the landscape of cinema?
The landscape is changing, but I don't have good news. It's not changing for the better. You're right. The film industry has become totally polarized. You have, on the one hand, the blockbusters, the superhero movies, the comic books, and their endless sequels. And then on the other hand, we have the world of film festivals. And the in-between, which was certainly when I started making movies, the Hollywood studios were making some serious films for people who are more than 20 years old. and who, films for grown-ups, films that actually had some thought behind them. They don't do that anymore. They really only make films for kids. And the others, and that occupies the overwhelming majority of screen time in every country in the world. Well, I don't know Poland that well, but pretty much everywhere else. And then the films made for grown-ups are a vanishing breed. They live in film festivals. There's more film festivals than ever. But when it comes to a commercial life for general audience, they have a very increasingly hard time finding space, living in the light, being actually heard about. It's an increasing challenge, and it gets tougher every single year for serious films. And they certainly have, lots of film festivals where they can go, but general audiences don't go to film festivals. And when you make a movie, no one sets out to make a movie hoping to go to a lot of film festivals. You set out to make a movie hoping that a lot of people are going to see it all over the world. And that's
tougher nowadays.
If you're not making X-Men or Superman or Batman or one of those, it gets tougher every year.
Do you see any possibility of escaping that gridlock? Any hope?
For me,
I don't want to end our conversation on such a bleak note.
Well, other than retirement. That's one way out.
Okay.
I wish I had a solution to this. There were those who said, well, the digital world is going to provide the solution because it's going to democratize access. It's going to democratize distribution. It's going to make universally available distribution. But actually, sadly, the opposite has happened. What the digital world has done is it's created an extraordinary clutter in which everything is available at all times, much of it for free. But if you actually want people to pay for your work, first it killed the music industry, but now it's killing the film industry because every film is available online for free the moment it opens in a theater, sometimes before. I have had films that I've made which were online before they even opened. They go, some festival, someone with a camera shoots it, and so the piracy is so devastating. Now, the way that the Hollywood studios deal with piracy is that they now make their superhero movies and they open them in every city, in every country, in the whole world on the same day to beat the pirates. To do that, they also spend $100, $200 million on marketing each movie. That's how they beat the pirates, and they are making that work for themselves. But the consequence of that is because those movies take up so much, what I call real estate, so much space, and that marketing campaign makes so much noise, global cacophony, that the smaller films, which don't have a $200 million to spend on marketing, and which really take time for people to discover, it doesn't all happen on day one. Those films are being crowded out more and more. And all of which is the digital universe, which led to this massive piracy, which in turn led to the studios changing the way they market movies and opening in films open in New York and Shanghai on the same day. And, I'm sure in Warsaw too, and everywhere else. And, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, an American film would open in the US. By the time it got to Japan, it could be a year later. Yeah. But not now. Now it's in Japan the same day. Yeah. And that changes everything, not for the better.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't give you more optimism.